So this specific mimer, and not only this specific mimer, but connected to the Deb Gimel Tammuz, connected to our parsha, is a very special mimer, and the Rebbe speaks about the mitzvah of para aduma, red heifer. Right? We all know that that was one of the mitzvahs that is brought as an example to show how the mitzvahs, the commands of Hashem, are above understanding, above logic, super they don't always make sense to us, but we keep the mitzvot even if they don't make sense to us. And here we'll read a bit more about these mitzvot. Who did know the reason of para aduma, red heifer? There was one person that did know the reason of para aduma in all of history. It says it wasn't the wisest. The wisest was King Solomon. So even King Solomon, with his great understanding, he did not know the reason. However, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, "Lecha ani megale tam para v'la'acherim chuka," which means Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, "I am going to explain to you the reason of para aduma. You will be the only person that will know this reason." And Hashem explains to Moshe Rabbeinu the reason of para aduma. We do not understand it ourselves, but we definitely know that Moshe Rabbeinu knew the reason, whatever it may be. And here, this leads us to a very interesting question about the mitzvah of para aduma, because the way the mitzvah is referred to is that v'yikchu elecha, Rashi says, v'yikchu elecha, they should bring to you the red heifer. Why does it say they should bring it to you specifically? So Rashi tells us that the para aduma, the mitzvah, is named after Moshe Rabbeinu. All of the cows, 9 cows, by the way, were used throughout history. The 10th will be used by Melech HaMashiach to purify us. But the point is that the para aduma, the red heifer, was named after Moshe Rabbeinu. But why? Why was it named after Moshe Rabbeinu? Out of everyone, Moshe Rabbeinu was the last one to name the para aduma after, because he knew the reason, he knew the logic to para aduma. So why do we name para aduma after Moshe Rabbeinu?
Rabbi, whenever we ask about the para aduma and the meaning, I want to know if we mean the structure of the mitzvah, which is interesting, or the reason of the mitzvah, which are completely two different issues.
Right. So certain parts, like maybe this is what you mean, the structure of the mitzvah. Certain parts basically have a certain logic, a certain understanding. We can grasp them. We can understand that water resembles purification, etc. But there's the reason, the logic to para aduma, to the whole concept of purity and impurity, and also the fact that the person that purifies, the kohen, the priest, that purifies the person that's impure, he himself becomes impure.
These are two different issues.
Right.
I mean, not the structure, but the two persons with different consequences,
right.
And the idea of...
right. So we see in para aduma, there are a few details that are not understood. The structure, you can say maybe there's a bit understood, certain parts to it. The concept is less understood, but okay, maybe you can bring a bit more of a somehow, but the details, certain details, are like totally their opposite. They don't make sense at all. The consequence, for instance.
You mean the two men?
Two men. But it's not only that. The whole idea of Tumah and Torah, impurity, is above understanding, above logic. But that's like above. There's no contradiction. the detail of the consequence, that's where there's a contradiction. How could it be, right? What happens is the kohen, the priest that makes that person pure, he himself becomes impure. Right? He's the one that's purifying. Okay, so those are the details. But here, so why is it called after Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu, he understood Paraduma. For him, it made total sense. He understood everything. So why do we name these red heifers after Moshe Rabbeinu? The red heifers of Moshe Rabbeinu throughout history. So the Alter Rebbe explains in Torah Oyer that if we take a close look, the way the Torah says, what is the words of the Torah? The words are Zois, Chukas. These are the laws of the Torah. Zot Chukat HaTorah. Shouldn't say Zot Chukat HaTorah. It should say Zot Chukat HaPara. These are the laws of the red heifer. Law means that it's above understanding. Chukah. It's a constitution. This is the way we do things in our country, and even if you think otherwise, if you say that it doesn't make sense, this is how it's done. So the chukah, when it speaks about Hashem, when it speaks about the chukah that the Torah tells us, it's totally connected to Paraduma. So the Alter Rebbe explains no. The Alter Rebbe says it's our approach to the Torah, the concept of the general Torah. Not only the red heifer. The red heifer is the best example. It's the best part of the Torah. That's where we can clearly see this idea. But all of the Torah should be done in a way, even if it does not make sense, we should do it with that feeling of Kabbalat Ol, that we receive the yoke of Hashem in order to fulfill the mitzvahs in the most complete way, which is in a certain way accepting that there's something higher that decides for us. And one of the interesting examples is from the command that Moshe Rabbeinu says to Am Yisrael right before Am Yisrael enters the land of Israel. Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, read Kriyat Shema twice a day. And if you read Kriyat Shema twice a day, so what would happen is, I would guarantee your enter to Eretz Israel. There was already a bracha that Am Yisrael received, that they will enter the land of Israel. Pachdechem u'meirachem, Hashem will make the nations fear you, and you will be able to conquer the land. So why do we need these extra commands from Moshe to say Kriyat Shema twice a day? So the truth is that Am Yisrael would need a bit of Mesirus Nefesh, what we call Mesirus Nefesh. Devotion, total devotion to Hashem. And that was done only through Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim, through accepting the mitzvahs of Hashem, and that is when we say Kriyat Shema. What do we say by Kriyat Shema? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, which is basically accepting Hashem as our King. Okay. If I was a rich man, right? We all know that. We all know that song from Tuvia. If I was a rich man, what makes a person rich?
Asamech b'chelko.
Asamech b'chelko. Yefeh mod, that's what we learn from ethics of our fathers. If I was a rich man. What else makes a person rich? What is the definition of a rich person? So one idea is
what he has is more than what he needs.
What he has is more than what he needs. Okay. Is it the amount of money that he has in his bank account?
No, generally.
So he's got to be in plus all the time. Mordechai, what would you suggest?
That definition is more in a physical sense. On a more spiritual and overall senses, if your needs that you have both spiritually and physically are met, in other words, if you have a relationship with who Hashem is, and Hashem supplies you with what the needs are that you need to survive, then you are a rich man. If you have descendants that you've been granted, you are very rich, and because that type of wealth is not judged by a secular world standard, but is judged more on a spiritual standard.
Yeah, very interesting. So hearing this, we are bringing a few more concepts. We're trying to make it a bit broad, the concept, the idea of being rich. It's not only about the money, it's not only having enough supplies to last you forever. Maybe there are spiritual sides to that as well. What can you define what is the point? So one person, this will make him rich, another person, that will make him rich. Some people care about the descendants, the next generation. Another person will say he's rich even if he doesn't have no money, but if he's able to visit museums, hear concerts, play music, that's what makes him rich. There's a few ideas, a few things. Shai, what would you suggest? What makes a person rich?
If someone's happy with what in their...
Hasameach b'chelko. Yafé מאוד. That's also what we learned in Pirkei Avot. Yaakov may have suggested it. Yaakov, what would you say? What makes a person rich?
Not constantly burdened with anxiety.
That's another good point,
yeah.
right? Yafé מאוד.
Everybody, especially these days, you know.
Yeah. All the hooting outside and all the materialism that we see around us. Being able to stay calm, stay relaxed, stay confident, happy with what you have. Again, we are coming to these, but I'm happy that we're bringing up more words. Hanoch, would you have any suggestions?
Contentment with one's position.
Yafé מאוד. Satisfaction, right? So I want to tell you the words here of let me show you where it is.
Thinking of the Mel Brooks movie, High Anxiety.
Classics.
Do they exist also in English?
Yes, there should be a translation of this mimer. I've got to find it. It's,
Is there a list of all the English mamarim?
Sorry?
Is there a list of all the English mamarim?
Yes.
Mamarim in English?
In English. There are certain mamarim that they translated. I think the Melukat, which is the ones that the Rebbe went through and basically wrote down, corrected. So this is one mimer.
And you find them here?
Chabad.org, you could find them. I've got to search. I searched the one in Hebrew, I couldn't find English. I think it should be there. So the way that we define rich people is Ein Asher Ela Bedas, Ve'ein Ani Ela Bedas. In other words, it's only in the mindset of a person. There could be an individual that has so much money he can't spend it in all of his lifetime, but he's still poor. And why? Because in his mind he acts. He understands a poor mindset, right? And on the other hand, there could be a person that sometimes he might not always be very rich and very wealthy, but in his mind, he's got a mindset of a wealthy person, of a rich person. And when we speak about this idea, we can see it also in the light of Hashem. We'll see it soon. There are three types of lights that Hashem has. By the way, if a person, and this is another interesting concept, it's not only about luxury. Luxury doesn't make a person rich. And I'll give you a proof to that. it says that if a person unfortunately needs support, so you have to fill in his needs, but you don't have to make him rich. That's the halakha. If you know of a person that unfortunately needs help, so your obligation is to help him out, but you don't have an obligation to make him rich. Now, if we take a close look into the halachot, we might find something else that's very interesting. If a person used to drive a Lamborghini or a Rolls Royce, and he is used to driving a Royce, right? And unfortunately what happened is that he lost all of his fortune. So when the community gets together and decides to help him, what do they need to buy? Can they buy a Fiat?
A Bentley.
Can they got to buy a Bentley or a Rolls Royce? That is the thing. Why? Because a person is used to a certain lifestyle, which means those are his needs. And you can see it, this is clear. There are people that they are used to a certain lifestyle, a certain level, and less than that they don't feel mensch, they don't feel good with it. So, and nevertheless that is not considered making him rich. Because again we said that on the one hand we aren't obligated to make a person rich, we are obligated only to fulfill his needs. However, if he used to drive a Lamborghini, we have to provide him with a Lamborghini. So a Lamborghini does not make a person rich. What makes a person rich? Once again, it's a plenty that is, sometimes it might be overwhelming. And that is why one of the things that a person, the nisayon, the challenge of being rich is harder than the challenge of being poor. The Rebbe always said that we should have the challenge of being rich, the nisayon of being rich. But that's harder. Why? Because for a person to really be rich, it has to come with a mindset and with the idea what to do with that money, right? So today all the psychologists say that, yes, if you will win the lottery or you will inherit a certain company or inherit a certain amount of money, you think that's going to solve your problems? No, it won't. What are you going to do? How are you going to run? How are you going to function things? How are you going to be able to control who to give money to, who not to give money to? What are you going to do with all of that? So it's not just we think, oh, we wish we'll win the lottery and that's it, that will solve all the problems. Not at all. In certain cases, and this has been proven, that it puts people in a worse situation. Until then, he worked hard for what he needed, but once a person gets plenty, it has to come with the da'as, with the knowledge of what to do with such a thing, the knowledge and the idea of being rich.
It's not enough.
It's not enough. What do you mean?
Was Shlomo Melech rich? He was not. He wrote always Havel Havalim.
Oh.
He wasn't rich.
Oh, yes, fair. So today we're going to speak a bit about also who was rich in our history. It says
Reb Zusha was
Reb Zusha was rich. Reb Zusha was rich. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu prayed Tefillah LaMoshe. In Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, we have two tefillot. We have Tefillah LaMoshe, which is chapter 90, a beautiful prayer that Moshe Rabbeinu prays for.
Ish Elokim.
Tefillah LaMoshe Ish Elohim Adonai Ma'ayin Atah Yisa Lanu. We have Tefillah LaDavid also, right? We have a few chapters that begin with the words Tefillah LaDavid. And there's a big difference between these two prayers. It says that the tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moshe Rabbeinu prayed, he was rich. It was a tefillas asher. It was a rich person, and with the true definition and with the true meaning of richness, which is not the amount of money, it's also the amount of money, it's the plenty that a person has. And together with that, he also has the understanding or the knowledge of the mindset of a rich person. And it has to go together, because without that, so even if you might have a fortune, you won't know how to function with it. And not only that, but David HaMelech, it says he was tefillah la'ani, he was a poor person. And when he prayed to Hashem, he prayed He was poor, which means the light did not, he might have had a fortune of a lot of money, but if we read his lifetime, if we read what happened to David HaMelech, we see that all the time he was facing struggles, and that's why he's considered a tefillah la'ani. Moshe Rabbeinu was a tefillah la'ashir. And this is the question. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu pray? A tefillah, a prayer, should be for a person that is missing something, that is lacking something. By the way, that is the obligation, mid'oraisa. When you speak about the
Tefillah is a bakasha?
Tefillah is a bakasha. Tefillah is a bakasha. When we speak about the plain mitzvah of davening,
And when you say
it is not davening every day,
it's not a
so that's
bakasha.
praising Hashem. That's not a tefillah. That's praising Hashem. It's also important. Part of our tefillah that we do, by the way, it's built out of praising Hashem, asking a certain request, which is tefillah, bakasha, we need something, and then at the end, praising Hashem once again. And that's the way when someone approaches another person, so that's the way to do it, right? You praise the person, and then you ask for what you need, and then you end with a few nice words as well. That's the way things should be done. So we learn that from the tefillah. That's a diplomatic way to do it. So when we go once again back to the story, so there's a big difference between King David and Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu prayed as a rich person. And the question is, why? What was he missing? What was he lacking? Why did he need to pray?
It was lacking two things.
What?
The support of the arm and entering Israel.
Eretz Yisrael, right. So if we go back to the concept of a rich person, ideally a rich person, even if he does not, if he's deprived from a certain thing, but he's got the mindset of a rich person, so he's not really lacking anything. Technically, yes, Moshe Rabbeinu did pray to go into the land. It was something that he was missing. But even if he would not go, his light, that says that Moshe Rabbeinu was Pnei Chama, his face was like the sun. He was not missing anything. Yeshua was like Pnei Levana. Yeshua was like the face of the moon. What is the difference between the sun and the moon? The moon becomes smaller. The sun always stays the same. So Moshe Rabbeinu was lacking. He was not lacking anything. So why does he need to daven? When we speak about, by the way, when we speak about Hashem's light, there are also certain lights that are that lack the full amount of light. When we speak about the light that brings life to what we see all around us, that is called Oira Memaleh. That's a poor light. It's not the real light. The real light is unlimited. That is the Or HaSovev, the light that surrounds us, which is a higher level of light, and so on. So, so there are midrashim that say, certain midrashim that say that Moshe Rabbeinu was not praying for himself. When he says Tefillah Moshe, he was asking for someone else. He was asking for, like the Midrash says, it's like a minister that turns to the king and he tells the king, I'm praying for a certain village that's in ruins. I want you to build it for yourself. It's not that I need anything, but I want for you to have this this city rebuilt.
Right, Hanan.
That's your parasha.
No, it's for him.
That was for him, right? Right. That's for him. But again, even if he's technically lacking something, in concept, in the idea, he's got a rich mindset. So even, in other words, even if he did not enter Eretz Yisrael, he was able to achieve. He was able to carry out everything, even without going. So there are mitzvot atliyot ba'aretz, and that's why for sure there would be an elevation in going into Eretz Yisrael. But nevertheless, he was in a rich position that he was able to carry out. The light of Hashem shined there very clearly. So the Rebbe says, tells us a very, very special idea. Yud Aleph. If you take a look at letter Yud Aleph, nearly the last page. sorry, it's the second page. So if you turn one page, one full page, and then another page, it's at the back of that second page. The letter Yudalef, the Rebbe says the follows. V'tzarech bir deha'ilui shenasa b'hagiluim delamada l'idei avodas ha'adam u'be'ikar ksheha'amshocha v'hagilui shelam y'alidei avodas ha'adam כיוון דזה שעל ידי תפילת משה היה המשוך והגילוי רק בנוגע כנסת ישראל, okay, so the Rebbe says like this, ויש לומר רבי יובס, כיוון שמשה הוא בן של ישראל, because Moshe Rabbeinu is the shepherd of Am Yisrael, he's the leader of Am Yisrael, לכן שחסר איזה עניין בכנסת ישראל וכמו שחסר העניין גם אצלו. בנוסף לזה שהצער שלו על זה שחסר ישראל, הצער גודל ביסר כאילו שהוא עצמו היה חסר, הנה גם החיסרון בישראל היה החיסרון שלו כי מוישה וישראל הם חד. The Rebbe says like this, that when we come to speak about the leaders of Am Yisrael, so the leader of Am Yisrael is truly one with the people. With Am Yisrael, that Moshe Rabbeinu is guiding them and leading them in the desert, they mamash become like one unit. And the moment that Am Yisrael are lacking something, so Moshe Rabbeinu, two things happen. First of all, what happens is that Moshe Rabbeinu feels the pain and he feels the suffering of Am Yisrael lacking that certain inyan. And second of all, not only that, that he's feeling the pain of Am Yisrael, it's not about the pain, more so it's the reality that he himself is also missing it. And this is the whole story of Moshe Rabbeinu, this is the whole story of what a true leader should be. A true leader is someone that actually can feel the other person. And when someone else is going through a hard and difficult time, so the leader feels that as well. And this is something that we could always see by the Rebbe, and Eli Wiesel says it best. Not only because the way he describes it, but because he is a person that experienced a lot of pain and suffering. And when he walked into the Rebbe's Fabregan, what he said is that it looks like the Rebbe is carrying the tzaros of all of Am Yisrael on his shoulders. So the Rebbe actually could feel what Am Yisrael are going through. And that is why he cared for each and every one of them. That's why he sent shluchim all around the world to try and help as much as he could. That's why, I'll tell you another thing. The Soviet Union, for many, many years, was closed. No one could enter, only special people, tourists, or businessmen, and things like that. And there were certain individuals that when they went, and you said that also, that your father went, right? And the Rebbe sent certain missions, told them to do certain missions to bring maybe tefillin, or to bring back from their certain thing, or to give them money, which is also very important. And there is an interesting video that I saw not long ago of one of those tourists that actually went and filmed a Fabregan in Moscow of those people, and you see one kid wants to ask the Rebbe for this bracha, another person asks this bracha, and they brought it back to the Rebbe. And every time the Rebbe spoke about the Jews behind the Soviet Union, behind the Iron Curtain, the Rebbe cried. The Rebbe took it very personally. And I was wondering to myself, why is the Rebbe so emotional about that? The Rebbe was not emotional. The Rebbe spoke very firmly about Miu Yehudi, who is a Jew. The Rebbe spoke firmly about not giving back land. The Rebbe spoke firmly about the Mivtzoyim. The Rebbe spoke firmly about Ahavat Israel. But there were very few times that the Rebbe was emotional. And when it came to the Yidden behind Masach HaBarzel, behind the Iron Curtain, so the Rebbe always became emotional. So I was wondering to myself, what is the meaning behind it? And then I thought like this, I don't know if it's 100% true, but that's my feeling. that in Russia there was a huge amount of Jews. The estimated amount of them is maybe 2 million Jews, maybe 3 million Jews.
He once said, Rov Am Israel Russia. He said once.
Yes, for sure. It could be, not anymore. But then, Rov Am Yisrael, Russia, by the way, wasn't just Russia, it was Ukraine, which was plenty of Jews in Ukraine, and all of the Soviet Union. So what happened is that those 2 million Jews were lacking basic Torah and mitzvahs. It's not about the food. They had to eat, they had everything there. It wasn't like there was a time that people were starving. But people could function, they lived a life there. It wasn't a pleasant life. But the Rebbe felt, in a certain way, it's as if he cannot put on tefillin. Because there's a Yid in Russia that the government does not allow him to put on tefillin. If it's elsewhere around the world, so there are people that do not know enough, but there's no government that is going ahead and stopping them from practicing Yiddishkeit. In Russia, it was very painful, because those people there, they could not practice Yiddishkeit. So this is again the idea that the Rebbe basically feels what happens to another Yid. And this is how we get back to Moshe Rabbeinu. Yes, Yaakov Meir. So back to Moshe Rabbeinu, we spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu understanding Parah Adumah, and we said therefore, first of all, why is Moshe Rabbeinu praying? Right? Why is Moshe Rabbeinu praying? What is he missing? What is he lacking? He's a rich person.
But isn't prayer also for gratitude? It's not what we're lacking.
Right, so there are two sides. Gratitude is, there are three types of prayers. One is gratitude, another one is connection, which is also related to gratitude. And the basic thing is when a person needs something, he prays. Over and above that, you should praise Hashem, you should be grateful, you should use also other tools to connect to Him in general. That's the idea, that's the broader concept of davening, of prayer. But the basic D'oraisa, the Torah tells us, according to the Torah, you don't have to daven 3 times a day. According to the Torah, davening is when a person needs something, he knows that he turns to Hashem. That's davening. Rabbanan brought us 3 davenings that we daven every single day, and the broader concept of gratitude, connection, thought and understanding, talking to Hashem also, which is all very, very important. But Moshe Rabbeinu, what was he lacking? He was lacking the fact that Am Yisrael did not know the reason of Parah Adumah. So Moshe Rabbeinu in a certain place felt like he was also blind. Why was he blind? He was rich. No, but if someone else is blind and he's united with that person, so that is as if he is blind himself. And that is the true idea of what a Rebbe is. And that is back to our Parshas Chukas. We said, why are the red heifers called after Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was above the mitzvah of red heifer. He understood the mitzvah of red heifer. He understood it. But he felt that he did not understand it because Am Yisrael did not understand it. For them it was like walking into a dark room. So Moshe Rabbeinu had that exact same feeling. And then, by Moshe Rabbeinu davening to Hashem, Hashem in a certain way answered him by explaining to him the reason. Because we know, the moment we know that someone understands the logic, it's easier for us to follow. It's like a student, a young student, that he listens to what his teacher tells him. And one day the teacher tells him, you know what, you should do this, and it makes total sense. After 5 days, the teacher tells him to do something that makes no sense. But he relies on the teacher because he knows that the teacher understands why to do so. So the moment we understand it, we know that the Rebbe knows, and Moshe Rabbeinu knows, that this is good for us and we should do this and we can understand this, that causes us to feel more calm and more relaxed about our decision. It's like following an instructor, right? We might not know what are we doing exactly, but nevertheless, we do have a connection. We do have a good feeling about it. So So this is a bit about the idea of Paraduma, about Moshe Rabbeinu, and in honor of the Rebbe for Gimel Tammuz. We have, Be'ezrat Hashem, we're having 2 events, very special events. One is people telling their own personal story about the Rebbe. That's in Hebrew, and that's Wednesday. But in English, we're having connected to the concept of technology. So there's Michael Alush, who is an engineer for the Israeli army, and he worked on drones, he worked on aircraft, and he will be talking about the Rebbe's guidance. And we have Ariel Gomez that is also coming, and he worked on the lunar lander Bereshit that Israel sent 2 years ago, I think, to the moon. And Be'ezrat Hashem, that's Thursday in English at Mayanot Shul, 28 Narkis. Thank you very, very much, and Shavua Tov to everyone.